Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a quick moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is your ultimate guide to understanding the do's, don'ts, and complexities of the higher ed social media ecosystem. Host Jenny Lee Fowler from MIT brings her expertise and passion for social media to the table. Each episode offers a deep dive into real-world examples, dissecting what worked, what didn't, and identifying valuable lessons along the way. You'll get the key insights and tips to help you elevate your own social media game. Make sure your social media efforts hit the mark every time. Subscribe to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or search for it wherever you love to listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a proud member of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow every day. Explore all of our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everybody, for another wonderful episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. I am very excited to be joined by someone who I've known about the work that their organization does for a while, just sort of continuing to kind of build what I feel like is now a very rich tapestry of a lot of the different ways that students can explore their career options, build skills, build their social capital, and all sorts of things. So, and I feel like we've come a long way over the past several years of sort of really like kind of validating those options, uplifting those options, and excited to kind of explore a little bit more deeply the work that Roadtrip Nation is doing specifically that is part of that tapestry. So the limited time that we have, we'll cover as much as we can. Mike, if you want to just talk about your background really quickly and what Roadtrip Nation does, and then we'll kind of start to dig in from there.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Mike. I'm one of the co-founders and president of Roadtrip Nation. So we're a national nonprofit organization. So we're about almost 100 employees. We've been around for 20 years now, which is absolutely crazy to think about. We are one part media-based nonprofit and one part education nonprofit. So like the media side of what we do, we send out this fleet of huge green motorhomes every year to go across America and road trip and with students inside the RVs. And the students interview people from different careers, from all walks of life, talking about their personal journeys, the steps they've taken to getting to where they are today, and all the failures, risks, ups and downs, and just the real story, not like the LinkedIn version of their career path, which is like, oh, everything's perfect, never got laid off, never had to pay off student debt, but like, no, like the real, all the twists and turns, all the messy stuff, how you started out, how lost you were, how you found your path. And so along those road trips, we produce content for PBS. We have a long-running PBS series and 50 million households every year. But most importantly, the great thing about PBS is that they allow the content producers to maintain the rights to all the content they produce. So over a 20-year period, we've developed one of the world's largest media databases of kind of student-created interviews of people talking about their career journeys. And so because of that, each road trip creates like almost 100 shorter format video assets from these interviews of people talking about their career journeys. So we now have this database of 12,000 video assets of people from all walks of life talking about their journeys, talking about the steps they took and getting to where they are today. And since a majority of our road trips focus on themes of equity and access and really trying to showcase and celebrate the stories of underrepresented groups and pathways that represent the future of work, a lot of those stories in the database also help the next generation see people like them and those pathways that represent the future of work, so they also believe there might be a place for them in the future of work as well. So this 12,000 video database, that's like, I love road trips. That's what got me into starting Roadtrip Nation in the beginning and all that stuff. But it's funny how life kind of meanders and winds its way through. And what has kept me engaged over so many years is this kind of the mission side of Road Trip, which is bringing these stories to young people and learners all across America who don't always believe that there's a place for them, and to realize like, actually, there's people just like you all over the future of work. And if they did it, maybe you can do it too. And here's what they've learned and here's what they can share with you. So that's really what we're leading into now in this kind of like latest season of Road Trip Nation. Is not season on PBS, but just like season of doing Road Trip Nation, is like, how do we bring those stories out to as many learners as possible? So
yeah, and I think it's so important because I think, like I said, I think we've come a long way just understanding that if you're certainly like traditionally aged, graduating from high school, how you sort of like are supposed to go on the path to define your career and those sort of things. Like there's, you can certainly even just take like a gap year and do that very intentionally. There's a lot even there, or just even like what does a sort of like gainfully employing, fulfilling career and life look like, and what are the journeys that people take to get to those points versus it being just sort of like, nope, you go to a residential 4-year college and you get your degree and then you work, and kind of go in a certain direction or something, just knowing that there's more options and that things are more fluid and dynamic, and giving that just so much more like heart and kind of depth, and just feeling really, like kind of comprehensive and reflective of the individuality that comes to each of our stories and everything. But the other kind of just funny thing that I thought of is like, if nobody has this idea already or what, but like, I feel like that is such a like treasure trove and database that would be amazing for like some PhD student to like research, like, okay, cool, I've got this like whole library of content of like people's stories, and they would like kind of like, okay, over time people will remark about this or that, or like, so I'll put that out there. Please take that idea, somebody research all of these like videos and things like over 20 years of people telling their stories. But I guess just to pinpoint, because I think, that idea of like the outcome, the end product, or so the impact that you would hope to have, is that idea of what you're saying. Like you're telling these stories, normalizing and affirming the experiences of people so that they can hopefully, through whatever sort of zigging, zagging path, make more informed post-secondary choices. So I guess if you could talk more about that, I guess of like maybe how that sort of realization came to be, because like you said, like originally it's just like, I just like taking road trips, and that is like sort of beauty, you take a pit stop at a roadside diner, you can just talk to people and hear amazing stories and that sort of thing. You're kind of like harnessing and kind of trying to lasso and bring that sort of energy into this, like just speaking more to that, because I guess it's like that idea that you might want to try to like curate and search, like you're saying, like we're in a season that we're trying to kind of tell a certain kind of story because we feel like it's maybe more relevant now than it may have been, or we couldn't have told this story before because it's about AI or something. I don't know. But like, so just that idea of like helping students make more informed post-secondary choices. Like, what is that sort of journey for you in Road Trip Nation, I guess, like been like over time?
I think the future of work is changing so quickly right now, and it's intimidating and scary. And I don't think everyone believes that there's a place for them in the future of work. And so we've believed that like a lot of our evolving role in this tapestry, as you put it, is, being the storytellers that show that actually there are people like you out there who have done this. And because we've done gazillions of road trips, with the express intent of like, exploring these stories, we did a whole road trip a few years back focused on formerly incarcerated populations. And we had a team of 3 individuals who have been justice impacted, who spent 10 and 15 years of their life behind bars for, a horrible incident that did not define their entire life. They're not the sum of the worst decisions of their life. And they had every bit of aspiration, ambition, just like any other student that or I know, in terms of wanting to define their own roads in life. And they hit the road across America and interviewed people in different careers who were also justice impacted at one point, but who went on to successfully transition to meaningful career paths. And it was like, so much of our storytelling in America today is so deficit based. It's so, this is happening, or that's happening, or this is exploding, or that's exploding, or this is on fire, that's on fire. We're forgetting to tell the stories of all of these incredible asset-based stories that are out there, to the point where, in this example, 3 justice-impacted, young people didn't really believe that there were stories of people. We forget the stories, just that there was even people out there who had successfully transitioned, because the only stories they hear are deficit-based stories of recidivism and violence and all this stuff. So, but on this road trip, they're like, oh my gosh, here's a former attorney. Here's a current attorney who was formerly in prison. Here's an incredible tech entrepreneur working on this new platform development. Here's an engineer. Here's a local civil planner, and here's specifically how they transition many times because of innovative higher education programs, credential-based programs, that help them get to where they are. But that's the important part, is that initial sense of spark and belief that, all right, there's someone out there who came from exactly where I came from. We did a Native American road trip years back too. Same, very similar situation where a lot of Native Americans in this country don't see examples of people like them in career fields that are kind of leading in certain industries. And that's just wrong, because there are incredible stories out there of Native Americans leading in careers all across the country. Those stories just aren't being told. Same with women in science, same with dreamers, immigrant populations, same with underrepresented groups in tech, same with single mothers. All these road trips that we've done, all of these themes create our own rich tapestry in Road Trip Nation, these 12,000 video assets that many people who are in those shoes and beyond just even the thematic road trips, every time we're interviewing someone about their career, just by the nature of having an honest conversation about, hey, where did you come from? Like, where did you start? Not where your fancy pants are today on LinkedIn and all that stuff, but like, where'd you start? And you'll be surprised how often an engineer at Spotify will say, I grew up in Colombia. My mom sold her house to pay for my college education so I could get my degree in computer science. I had an enormous amount of pressure to make it through college because the wealth from my family home was put into my college degree. And now here I am. I work at Spotify, and it wasn't perfect. I got a D in computer science my freshman year, but I kept going. And now I'm an engineer at Spotify. And and there's so many of those stories out there, but in our culture today, we don't create space to talk about that. There's no box on LinkedIn that says, tell me about your immigrant story coming from Colombia and how your mom sold her thing, So then what does that do to the next generation who's coming up and looking at all these stories on LinkedIn or anywhere else, and who's thinking, oh my gosh, Catalina, this woman from Colombia, she has this perfect job at Spotify. She never went through any hardships. She never dealt with financial hardship. She's never dealing with what I'm dealing with. But you know what? She totally did. And there are those stories out there. And so you wonder why next generation feels alone, feels isolated, feels like there's no hope, feels like everything's changing so quickly. But it's been that shift in our culture of like powerful vulnerability, creating space for people to talk about the tough moments in their lives and doing it through an asset-based lens, and then B, really just creating places to share those stories out and help people realize they're not alone.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more.
Yeah, because I think like part of some of the things that I'm thinking about from what you're saying is like, it's really powerful to have kind of the nudge that you give people being like, yes, we want to hear your story. We're going to really give it sort of a very comprehensive kind of coverage where it's not just, like the polished LinkedIn profile page that is kind of just a snapshot and kind of just a quick summary of like, this is where I worked and when, and, maybe a little bit of detail or whatever. It's like, no, I'd like to know sort of like, honestly, like the in-between, like how did you get from here to here? And what are sort of all the blemishes and hiccups and struggles and, the stress and everything, and just making sure that people know that that's okay. Because I think people assume it's like, well, to get to where you are means that, everything worked out. It was stress-free. Everything had to be perfect and all that. And it's like, you're kind of trying to thread that needle, really kind of precisely versus it being like something that could be much more up and down and sort of like, well, actually, I made a mistake. I worked at this place and I worked there for less than a year and it wasn't great. If I knew better, I probably would have asked these questions in an interview, and giving space to those things and trying to make like a platform to sort of curate all that versus being, because I was going to say is like, the only things I'll see sometimes it's just, like a random happenstance LinkedIn post that someone is being really authentic and genuine about, but it's like, they're the exception. They're the person that just feels very inspired and inclined to share details about their life on LinkedIn. But it's also like, unfortunately going to be probably like lost in the noise of all the other stuff that like LinkedIn influencers are doing that are like gaming the algorithm to get it in front of your face and whatever. Like there's so many dynamics, I guess, to it of just sort of like you're saying, like the people, their experiences, and then even just sort of like just that idea that like that's part of like the beauty is that like there is no shortage of content or story to tell if you just sort of like keep playing this out. And that's 20 years that you've been doing this. Like there's always new stuff. And certainly why like my sort of lane in this world is like podcasting. It's like I strongly believe that everybody has a story to tell. So it's like, all right, mine is just within like the higher ed world. How do people sort of navigate working at these institutions or working with them or navigating them as students and everything. So all that to be said, I guess, to kind of try to leverage all of this of what we're covering, because I think you did an amazing job sort of capturing, like, why is this important? Why, you've been doing it and it's kept you engaged for the past 2 decades. Like, how do you envision sort of like working with like faculty, staff, and engaging their students in like career exploration? Because I do feel like this can be, again, like leveraged wherever it's gets relevant for the audience to be inserted if they are maybe like just graduating from high school, or if they're graduating college, or if they're in college, or, maybe they are, an adult learner considering what they should do to gain skills for the future of work and everything. Like, how do you just imagine sort of like plugging in or working maybe in tandem or side by side with like, the formal higher ed institutions?
Well, we do have a curriculum that we've seen in a lot of first-year experience courses and other courses. It's very modular, but it basically guides students in building their own road trip projects where they interview people in their local community and kind of learn how they got to where they are today. So not every student obviously can go on a Roadtrip Nation RV. We only have 6 of them go across America, but you don't need the motorhome. You don't need to go coast to coast. It's really about social capital development and storytelling and talking, and that can be done anywhere. So we've developed this pretty awesome curriculum. It's all video-based and guides students through building their own road trip projects. It has a bunch of videos from 20 years of Roadtrip Nation that help students think through the high-level things of like a lot of themes we're talking about, like shedding the noise is one lesson, helping them kind of get rid of some of those pressures that are holding them back and making them to think that there's not a place for them in the future of work, exploring their interests, trying to connect their interests to things that are in, we just believe in kind of an interest-based approach to finding your career path. I mean, I think labor market data and all that stuff does come into play at a certain point and looking for high growth jobs, but like the workforce is changing so quickly. Like as soon as you think you're going after one industry because it's like the hot thing now, boom, it's changed. So like better to start with who you are and what you're interested in. And we've seen that over 20 years. Like you mentioned, a research PhD doing like an ethnographic study on our 20-year, 12,000 videos. I can tell you like what they say basically is follow your interests. I mean, the people that we've interviewed over 20 years, if they were into, and it's deep, and it can be as weird as like road trips or storytelling or design or making things or building things or, and then, but just starting with some of those pieces, then kind of scaffold, and that it will change over time. But the curriculum is a really great way that kind of like harnesses 20 years of Roadtrip Nation into it. And it's 5 lessons, and it culminates with students, going through some of these video lessons of like explore your interests, shed the noise, but then build a road trip and go interview someone in a field that you're interested in. And it's on our website, roadtripnation.com. If you go to roadtripnation.com and then you go /experience, that's like the whole thing on our course. And there's ways to like email our team. We have a whole team set up that like kind of works with education partners on implementing that. Molly Gazin runs that in our team. She's amazing. It's open access and free. And we have other stuff we're building too that's coming down the line that we're really excited about. But for right now, that's the main way that we're hoping to kind of mobilize more learners and educators, to kind of help students build these experiences for themselves, and like, we think there's a lot to share from 20 years of Roadtrip Nation, but hopefully that inspires students to want to create their own, to go out there and talk to people themselves and to do what you're doing and what I'm doing. There's no replacement for going out and asking questions of people out there in the world. And it's kind of lacking right now, to be honest, because everyone's got the internet and social media and they rely on that. But just getting students excited about something as simple as a road trip, whether it be across America or around your county, to just go talk to people about their career paths, we think is a really big, important idea, and really chips away, once you have these conversations, at some of the fear and insecurity. And you know what? You build skills along the way that are super important on your career journey. When we first built our first road trip 20 years ago, that started the whole thing, like I had never done a cold call before, but I had to cold call all these people up in these different careers and jobs. Like, hey, we're doing this road trip project. Can we interview you? And along the way, it gave me a sense of belief for my own journey that helped give us the confidence to start Roadtrip Nation later. But that first road trip also gave us the skills of doing all the stuff that we didn't really get in other avenues. So building a road trip project, a lot goes into it. Cold calling is a huge thing, or cold messaging, or cold whatever, however you want to call it today. But just the same thing, probably what you do to get people to come on your show, like that skill is enormous. And there's a lot behind that in terms of self-efficacy and confidence. But anyways, I don't mean to sales pitch our curriculum, but it's free. So we're not like trying to make money off of it. But it is something that we really believe in, is like trying to mobilize more students to go through this experience. So
no, yeah. And I mean, I think it's just an important sort of paradigm that I think needs to kind of continually kind of wash over society and higher ed specifically, that idea of kind of like I forget if I even like mentioned this, I know there's some people who are habitual listeners to every episode of my podcast, but like this was end of 2022 or 2021. Now I'm spacing on the exact timing, but like it was like during kind of like a career transition time for me. Like I was ready kind of to move on from a job I'd been at for a while and worked with a career coach. And it was like, it helped me to discern kind of the things that you were talking about, like things that will apply in whatever type of organization, industry, whatever. Like, what are the type of organizations that you want to work for? Do you prefer to work independently or part of a team? Like, those are some of the like building blocks, and then you can start to use that to say like, well, yeah, I mean, I think I would prefer to work in the sports world or higher ed or whatever else. But like trying to help people discern those things, and if higher ed can do more of that and make career services, I feel like just feel more kind of dynamic and relevant. And part of that, I think, is leveraging tools like the curriculum, like you mentioned, because yeah, like for me, podcasting has been always like a side project, but a hugely beneficial and nurturing and kind of fulfilling one for exactly the stuff that you're talking about. And like, it's been sort of this through line for a lot of my life and stuff. So I think it's, trying to encourage even looking into experiences like this, that it's like, I don't think I ever want to or could make this like my full-time job, but it's a way to like continue to help me feel like I'm learning and growing and building my network and my social capital and putting myself out there in a very authentic way and all that. So like, that's even part of it. Cause I think it's like, obviously there's the paradigm of a long time ago of like, well, you just pick a job at a company and you stay there until you retire. And now it's like, well, that's pretty rare. It's great if you were to have that. Now it's like, we're probably going to be like hopping around at different places. And now it's like, you might even be like hopping around different industries. And like you said, like certain jobs like that you might have don't even exist yet. And like, but if you can acknowledge like those fundamental building blocks and have ways to feel like you have, I don't know, I guess it's like things that are just sort of like innately yours and maybe independent of any particular like company or like, because that's what I think about. It's like, oh, well, I have a bunch of like higher ed work friends. It's like, well, I should just have like people I know that like, I guess like know what I do or appreciate what I do that aren't like tied into higher ed. Because if it's like, well, if I ever felt like changing, I've have to like completely reset or something. But so I think all really powerful, helpful kind of bits of advice, and certainly just, actual tangible things that folks can utilize. So as we wrap up, any kind of final thoughts, call to action, words of advice, things in your mind as you're thinking about sort of this sort of context of like students trying to make these post-secondary choices, which can include college, can include a lot of different things and gap years and all of that, like how people are trying to fit these things together. Just advice from, I guess, 20 years of Roadtrip Nation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to try to like help take the temperature down for young people thinking about that next step, and just helping them to take a breath. We found one of the best ways to do that is to be like, hey, other people have done this too. And there are people like you. And if you ever need access to stories of people who've done that, we have 12,000 of them, 12,000 videos, and our website is just roadtripnation.com. And for whatever path, whatever background, whatever interest, whatever hurdle someone's overcome, if there's someone in your life or students in your class or your niece or nephew or whatever, there is some video in our archive that will speak to them. And you can be like, hey, I know this is rough, but Catalina Laverde, engineer at Spotify, came from Bogota, Colombia. Parents had to sell her home to pay for college. She didn't get straight A's either. She got a D in computer science after all of that. And she still got through it. And now she's an engineer at Spotify and she's okay. It's easy just to say, hey, it's going to be okay. Don't worry, people. But to actually say Catalina Laverde came from Colombia, sold her family home to go to college. She got a D, which no one really talks about. That's the important part too. People need to talk about the D's they got in college, and whatever, because that is disheartening for learners, and be like, it happens engineers, entrepreneurs, successful people, like got bad grades at one point. Don't get too many of them in a row, but bounce back from it. And the more you can show specific examples of those stories, and if you need help, Roadtrip Nation has so many of them. Storytelling, I think, is one of the most powerful tools to get specific, to help young people earn some credibility that you're not just saying, it'll be okay, you'll get through it. Take a deep breath, everyone. Young people are saying, screw you. It's crazy. You take a deep breath. If you say, take a deep breath, it'll be okay, and here are stories of people just like you who got through it, those are proof points. So the more that you can back up what you're saying with stories, asset-based stories, if you need help, we have tons of them. So that's our 2 cents.
Yeah, because the other big example I would think of is especially in the college context, it's when people have to take a leave of absence or drop out for a semester or a year, but then they still finish and they still it's all those things we want to uplift and highlight and normalize, and the idea of okay, totally. Don't take it from me, your parent or your trusted teacher or mentor, because it's I'm old and I don't get it. It's take it from these people, that. I think that is anybody will probably be oh yeah, that's a good point. It's they think it's I know what I'm talking about. You should trust me, but it's you know what? Don't take it from me then. Take it from these people who could literally tell you their own story, and it's sort of yeah. So I think really great. Again, an amazing resource. That's what I kind of wanted to just hang out, and I appreciate you kind of giving a quick moment of your time for this. And we'll link out to Roadtrip Nation so folks can check it out and keep the conversation going with you and just all the great resources that you have. So just thank you so much for hanging out, and just have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.